be such a fun chat. Lisa, the actual Lisa, thanks for bringing us all together. And before we get into your reading, how did and when did you choose to make justice the center of what you do? Do you know, like, when that was?
Yes, I do. I think it was the moment I was born. I just think, and I think my reading will sort of expose this, that from the moment I really could understand what was going on in the world around me, I realized that there was something that just wasn't quite right about it. And I set my mind to making a difference and bridging those gaps. It just was very intuitive for some good reasons.
We are ready to hear a selection from South Oakland. Let's hear it for Lisa.
I have the book here, but I actually, I had the pleasure of creating a piece that was very suited for tonight and very particular to this reading. And so it's kind of a combination of different portions of the story so that you got the arc of the story that I want to tell. In the 1970s and 80s, I was a pigtailed tomboy, bouncing around small western mountain towns. From the snow-capped Rockies to the slopes of Sun Valley, those towns were big on beauty, but they were very light on difference and diversity. And I would look around these towns and my community, and I would ask myself, one of these things is not like the other. And then I would think, it's me. By the time I went to college in 1990, I lived in 23 different spaces, over 6 states, in 12 different mid-sized towns and cities in the western United States. I had an aunt called when I made my way to the University of Arizona, and she was calling to let me know that I had a 40-something cousin that lived in Tucson. And I thought, I've never heard of this cousin. Cousin Richard, she said, had been there for quite a while. And I thought, I'd love to meet him. And so I took down his number. And I thought to myself, it'd be nice to have a home-cooked meal. Maybe his wife will make me a nice home-cooked meal. But I was still curious, how come I had never heard of Cousin Richard? I called him, and we decided to meet at an intersection in a residential downtown historic Tucson neighborhood. It was organized by shotgun railroad adobes and backyard guest houses. One of those guest houses Richard called home, a home of one. I was surprised by Richard again when he waved me down, resplendent in tight black-fitting jeans and his black signature jacket, me in my 1984 Honda Civic hatchback, silver. He was probably hella stoned. And he had such a broad smile. And he was mischievous, and I knew it instantly. And I also knew that there would be no home-cooked meal from Richard's wife. He taught me everything I wanted to know about desert living, and there was a lot to know about desert living. He taught me about queer culture, which was so new to me. And we had so much rum and coke together, so much rum and coke. I liked Richard instantly from the moment I met him. It was instant, and it was mutual. So again, no home-cooked meal. But with Richard, I was home. And that was new. Because let's be honest, housing insecurity defined my childhood. It is not normal to move 23 times, and it's really traumatic. And for me, that trauma shaped my future. And it meant following my sense of justice. I decided to start a family of companies that was rooted in justice. I believe justice is a business imperative. It frames my work. And I believe that justice is defined as a human right. and that housing is a human right, and that housing should have been my human right. And I believed as a businesswoman that I had a particular role to play, that I had to self-elect myself to solve this problem and more, and that I could in business more so than I would ever be able to as just a plain old Lisa Wise. And I had a feeling that if I led my businesses with purpose, they would soar. That was my bet. And I was right. And it all started with an unexpected windfall. And so you might ask, what happened to Richard? Richard lived his life largely unattached. He was cavalier about staying in one place, and I was a naive listener. One warm desert day I saw Richard after some time had passed, and he had the telltale signs of AIDS all over that handsome, mischievous face. The lesions did the storytelling for him. Richard used his privacy and his secrecy as armor. He was running from the stigma of loving men. He was shunned for carrying a virus. And for me, that was just more injustice. I had the privilege, and it was a privilege, of caring for Richard for 2 years. It was the longest and best conversation of my entire lifetime. Richard died of AIDS in 1996. He took his last breath as I held his hands and stared into his still very, very, very mischievous face. In those final days, he gave me some parting instructions, and I do want to note here that he waited until the final day to give me any parting instructions, because that man loved life more than anyone I have ever met. And I had been waiting hard. I'm like, really, what do you want me to do? But he told me in those last few days, he wanted me to have his 1993 Honda Civic hatchback. And he wanted me to take over his garden apartment lease. That was a space I loved. But as I let go of someone who anchored me and who gave me a sense of purpose and unconditional love I craved, I really wasn't interested in more uncertainty. I wanted, and I knew I needed, to own a home of my own. And so when it was time to clean out that garden apartment, I gathered his friends and I invited them to take what they pleased. And at that time, if you're my age, you know that included some very expensive cocktail drugs to treat the condition that he had to suffer from. And I surveyed what was left. A handful of sentimental items, the Honda Civic. And then I turned on my heel, and almost immediately I sold that Honda Civic. I didn't care how old my Honda Civic was. I wanted the cash. And so with that cash in hand, I went home and I called my very last landlord. And I had an offer. I was renting one half of this gorgeous 1893 Adobe duplex on Rubio Avenue, south of the very same downtown where I had met Richard for the very first time. I bought that duplex for $83,000, and it was the best decision I ever made against someone's will. That mud house changed absolutely everything about my life. It became and still is the first house in the now $2.5 billion portfolio of homes that our family of companies manage over 2 states. It shaped my high-touch, empathic, and justice-forward approach to managing homes and caring for the people that are in them. That's not just managing assets. And the formula works. We're a $7 million company of companies that disrupted an industry. We really did. And we did it by putting justice ahead of profit. And so some people have asked me, is there anything else of Richard's that you kept? And I did. But remember, Richard was simple, and he needed to be. As our 2-year conversation unfolded, much of it happened while he rested in bed. And we're not talking about throw pillows and duvets and flat screen TVs. We're talking about a Richard bed, which was simple, It was a hardwood, twin-sized platform bed with a 3-inch foam mattress and a sheet. And it was weird, but it was all Richard, and it made me think of him every time I thought of it. And so later, that bed was perfect for my own home. A reminder of that long conversation. And for 8 years, my son Beckett, who's right over there, has been tucked in to that very same bed almost every single night ever since. He's about too big for it, and we're talking about a bigger bed. But I know that when I tuck him in there, he's safe and sound and secure. And to me, that's justice. And for a fun fact, and I'll leave you with this, we did buy him a real mattress for that bed. Because he's a growing boy, and he deserved it. Thank you.
That's way cooler than the race car one. That's amazing. So, Lisa, as we get into the panel, how does it feel to put all this thought, all of this you onto pages, and now are releasing it like a bird into the world?
Oh, like a flock of birds. Thank you. I love a bird pun. You can't get away from it in this business.
Perfect.
It's, in many ways, it's the arc of my own journey. It gives me a chance to help people understand why the work I do means so much to me. That truly being housing insecure is something I don't want anyone ever to feel. And that was the engine I needed to say, I have a chance to make a difference. I have some weird biological instinct to make money. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so how can I use that for good? And I was very ashamed about being very business-oriented and entrepreneurial at heart. It's why I pursued a nonprofit career for so many years, until I realized, wait, can I impact people in their homes every single day and build security for myself, for them, and others? And the answer was absolutely. And so here I am doing just that and saying, I can actually make a bigger difference in business. And that's a gift. And I'd like to share with other people that that's a path forward for our society and for our world.
Let's bring in Stacey and Christina too. Please feel free also. This is not like a panel. Jump in, share, go back and forth. Christina, let's talk about how you differentiate with justice in your company.
So that's a great question. I had the pleasure of actually working as the CEO of Conscious Capitalism, which was a really neat organization. It's predicated on 4 principles. It was founded by John Mackey. They are, establishing a business with a higher purpose, operating it with a conscious culture, conscious leadership, and then also having a stakeholder orientation. So you're not just focused on profit, but you're focused on outcomes in society, in the environment, amongst the people that you work with. And I think, quite frankly, that was the last role that I had, but it really started as a kid. My mom was the head of community engagement with the World Bank. And so from that point, as well as working, in my Catholic schools, in the community, I was always very driven to service. And I think, or to serve both. And so, I built this company, Therapeutics, with the underpinnings of conscious capitalism and sort of the thought that you really, in order to be a good server, you need to understand the people you're working with. So you need to be humble, you need to be empathetic, like you said earlier, you need to be mindful of other people's needs and really listen. And I will say today, we just expanded our market. We're now in New York. We're one of the first 36 retail licensees. It's our cannabis in a retail adult use market, which is amazing. My partner, one of my partners, is actually a rabbi who puts service first, so Jewish rabbi is one of my partners. And then the other majority partner actually is what we call in New York a justice-involved individual, and he was formerly incarcerated and then over-policed because he was of color, and in particular in the trafficking space. And so I'm so glad that he gets to take part in this emerging market, but it really is because we care, and I care, and I want to make sure that people who are downtrodden, who are disadvantaged, who have been negatively and disproportionately impacted by the foreign drugs in particular, have an opportunity to participate in the upside economically of cannabis. And so, that's why we've been into what I do. And like, you know, Lisa, I never in a million years thought I'd be an entrepreneur. I was working in the nonprofit sector. I was excited getting my little pennies for the paycheck. And I would go into board meetings and I'm like, what the? Everybody around my table is making all these decisions and their asses had money. And I was like, I think I'm going to shift my trajectory here. Let me go and get some of this cash. And I think I can reinvest it and do differently as an executive and a CEO. And if they can do it, most of the folks around the table that we sit at are men in particular, mine, they're white men, Asian men. And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. And so justice has always been at the forefront. Service has always been at the forefront of my work in particular. So I'm going to pass the microphone.
Quick follow on that. Was it harder to find the rabbi and the returning citizen to your partners?
Oh my God.
I'm not good at making those.
I've had so many. The first one was, one of my friends recommended that I move into the space. My ex actually did. He said, I want to Christina, you know, I've got this this Nigerian and this Jewish guy. You should talk to him. Like, this is a bad joke. You got to be kidding me. And it was by chance. You know, I would say that in this space, and you probably both have had this experience, everything just aligns when you're doing the right thing. And it's amazing. I never thought that I would meet him. We become fast friends. He reminds me of my younger brother who passed, right? And he's like a brother from another mother, literally, but his family owns Tacoma Wellness up in DC, in Ward 4. And we just decided we're going to go state to state together. And then the justice involved individual was very difficult to find somebody to qualify, but we have a phenomenal partnership. And I'm so proud of what we're building together.
That's so awesome.
Okay, I can pass.
Yeah, totally. Same question though. How does justice differentiate what you do with Shop Made in DC and your work up to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the work that I've always done, but I never began the work with that as a lens, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't even, I'm still coming to terms with the fact that, like, somehow I run a company now. You know, it all came at my first work out of college, set the tone for everything, or even my internship in college. Like, I learned that I had, you know, you're in school, you learn what your skills are. I was skilled in communications and graphic design and those things, and I got this internship where I was working for a tourism organization, and I got to do their newsletter. And that dates me, so just sit for a minute and think about that. A newsletter that you like lay out on paper and you put in the mail. But I learned very quickly that I could use my powers for good, right? I never said like, oh, I want to help people, but it felt good to be able to take something that I was good at, writing and layout and publicity, and actually help people. And so then that job led to another job in community, and very quickly I realized as this introverted child that it felt good to be around people if you were helping people and there was a purpose there. So in a lot of ways, my justice was self-serving because I finally felt at home being able to use a skill that I knew that I had to connect me with people, because I think as a child, I felt so like awkward and had an inability to connect because I was so shy. So that is just like, you know, one step after another. I met Lisa as I was running a nonprofit that supported independent business growth. So like I quickly learned that I could help small business, and that felt good because small business is what equals community to me. And so I'm so proud of Lisa and her team. Like, I worked for so many years with you guys, and then all of a sudden I wasn't working with you. And because
You
I
said
started
it'll
a
be
project,
easy, yeah.
I think I may have said to Lisa, like, oh, I'm going to do this project. I got a little funding from the city to do a project. I know. So 5 years later, I'm still in some ways sitting beside Lisa saying, like, shit, what happened? I started a project. I never like, I didn't jump from like a nonprofit to I want to be an entrepreneur. I think I've always been entrepreneurial, but I started a project, and it's just a project. There's a
state project.
Yeah.
Multi-million-dollar project.
But so to me, it was never about like, how do I create a business? How am I an entrepreneur that makes a difference? I think I always just wanted to make a difference, and then the business happened to me. I thought it was a project.
And you're making a difference in so many lives, so many creators and makers, over 800. When you go into your store, they are front and center. By every product, it's like, hey, this is Mary, she makes these candles, and this is Bobby, he makes these t-shirts. How important was that, and was that an evolving thing, to put the makers up front and to showcase them the way you do?
No, it was, in fact, it was shrunk down. I think I had imagined supporting less makers at one time. In a more, I saw large profiles of them and larger pictures, and I quickly learned that we had a lot of work to do. You know, there were a lot more people in our community, and so those profiles were always front and center, but we had to shrink them down. So it allows us to put, we usually, in our larger footprint stores, we have at least 110 to 150 makers. So.
Were you at some point like, I can send a newsletter about all these people?
I mean, I may or may not have one laying out on my computer now. I mean, I taught for years. I taught magazine and newsletter layout at a college, because that was a class that you could
She was 6 when she taught my class. Lisa, talk about like the differentiator and the work you're doing with Birdseed as well.
Yeah.
Because as you go through the flock, Birdseed is there soaring high.
Yeah, right. Okay. So Birdseed is the biggest win, right? So I had been asked during the pandemic to really think about what our succession plan was. Like, what if someone needed to be replaced urgently? And we started thinking about succession planning and what it looked like to make sure that the thousands of clients that were relying on us knew they could continue to rely on us if the person that they had met when they started working with us was no longer available. And so this entire idea of like, what's sustainability for the company and what is the legacy that I want to create, and it really raised a lot of questions about the future of our work and what mark I wanted to leave. There was a point at which starting and running businesses was so novel and it seemed like I was getting away with something. And then there was this other point where I'm like, oh, wait, people are really counting on me. And that was a whole other part of the business. And I'm like, oh, geez, that's stressful. And then there was I'm responsible for more than I ever imagined. And I need to continue to be responsible even if I'm not around. What does that look like? And what do I want people to remember about Lisa Wise, the leader? So we were sorting out what would become of the company and what would become of the foundation and the philanthropy work that I'd wanted to do. And the question mark was, if you won the lottery, which this woman here told me is basically code for if you were no longer alive, what would happen? And she did truly teach me that. It's funny. And we were like studying this. It was like studying, okay, well, like met my wife at Planned Parenthood, but that doesn't seem right. And like, what do I want to leave behind? What do I want to achieve and accomplish? And I went for a walk one night and it just clicked. I said, I just want to help people buy houses, full stop. I just want people to have a windfall. That's it. The same windfall I got from Richard, that $8,300 changed absolutely everything for me in life. And I want it to be easy. I actually want everything to be easy. As it turns out, it's not really like that. But in my brain, when I come up with these ideas, everything's really easy. And I thought, we will just simply create a foundation through which people will receive cash money to help them buy homes, and that's it. There's no requirement, no reporting, no strings, no bureaucracy. Let's just give people a windfall. Let's give people that don't look like me a windfall. Let's give people who are Black, Indigenous, people of color a windfall, because I am pretty sure that the whole industry that I've been profiting from and thriving in is squarely responsible for the generational wealth gap, and that does not feel right to me. And I'm looking around the industry and nobody's saying anything about it. And I'm talking to my team who's here in this room, and we're like, hi, we're not feeling good about this at all. And so I'm walking on this dark pandemic walk, and I'm like, okay, I got it. I want to give money to people to buy houses. This is great. Like, so this is what's going to happen. And we're prepping the will and we're doing the estate planning. It's all good. It's great. And then I'm like, I turn around. I got the dogs, got the 3 dogs, because we got to get the pandemic puppy. And I'm like, oh, geez, well, it's a bummer that I have to be dead for that to happen. So in order for my dream to come true, I can't even be around to see it. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then I was like, no, let's do it now. Let's go ahead and start making down payment grants available today. And there's really no reason not to. I don't see any reason not to. So I texted Grace, thank you. So I texted Grace, who's sitting here, tucked into that corner over there, and I said, Grace, listen, I've decided we need to make down payment grants, and we need to do it. Oh, and this is the housing justice work we've been dreaming of, and what we've decided needs to be our focus as a company. And she's like, oh, that's so great. And it was probably like midnight. And she's like, that's so great. This is before she had a baby. I'm not mean. And she's like, yeah, this is exactly what we've been envisioning. So like, what are you thinking? Like, 2021, mid-year. And I was like, I'm, pretty much thinking next week. And she's like, oh yeah, there's kind of this pandemic and the staffing. Don't worry about it, Grace. I will cover it. I will take care of it. I will see if I can pull together the community of people that we've been lucky enough to follow us and believe in a company that wants to do right by the world, and let's see what we can put together. And by February, that was September of 2020, and by February, we announced our first grant round. And today, the Birdseed Foundation has helped 11 families move into homes. We've raised, thank you. And I would like to add about 50 zeros to that number. And we should all be thinking about how many zeros we add to that number. But we've raised several $100,000. We've expanded to another city. We've had over 475 people apply for grants. People need, want, and will use this money to build generational wealth that we've denied them. And it's my responsibility as someone in an industry that has intentionally segregated our communities to create a new and just and more equitable future. That is my responsibility. It's all it is. But if I want to make a living and make a profit, I keep thinking often, people say, well, it's my fair share. Oh, great. My fair share is more than other people, so I'm going to redistribute that wealth. Because not everybody gets what's fair. I got more. So let me think about how to make sure that I do what's right by other people. And you know what? You talked about differentiation, Tommy. That differentiates you. And people don't like companies that are the same. So if you want to talk about how to be a profitable, thriving company that's attractive to new Gen Z, millennial, and the next generation behind them, operate your business with a justice mindset, and you will rise above your competition, and you will fly high and soar in business, and I guarantee it.
I was coming to you next anyway, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so
follow thoughts.
I think that's so true, and we didn't really talk about how we got to know one another. I think they did, but Lisa actually, I met through, I think, LGW and Conscious Capitalism, so Leadership BirdWatch and Conscious Capitalism. And I looked up this amazing woman online, and I was like, Lisa's so cool. And I'm like, who's Lisa? And so I went online and I Googled her, and I looked at her website, page by page. And because I was in the real estate development sector, most of the work that she did resonated with me. But it was Birdseed that caught my attention. And then, out of nowhere, I hear that Lisa is doing a round of funding. So when it comes to differentiation, I think that's a really important point that she's making. Doing business differently does matter. I'm not Gen Z, I'm Gen X. But I actually saw it on her website and ended up investing in her company as a result. And I was broke. You don't know that, but I really don't have any money. I haven't made any money yet. I got these businesses that are worth tons of money, but I am not cash flowing. And so I'm kind of broke, but I paid
all that weed in New York, you'll be fine.
I'll be good soon. But I was like, this is my last little bit of investment money, really money period, in my savings account, and I put it into her business. Because I really believe in other people that are doing great things and women-owned businesses too. So I don't know, that ties into my daughter a little bit, why I do what I do, but I really believe in women-owned businesses and people that do good by other people. So
did you know that?
I don't think she did that broke.
I didn't know she was broke. The pressure is on. Anyway, I'll be pitching my services later. No. Yeah, dinner's on me. No, I'm like, call me up when you have your pitch deck ready. I mean, the feeling's mutual, right? The people that care about the right things will find each other and we'll work together to make sure all tides rise, because that's what we're looking forward to. And this is the future of business, it truly is. Thank you.
And speaking of business, you mentioned conscious capitalism as like the organization, but just as like a mindset, how do you get businesses thinking consciously about capitalism and doing good and using justice?
Yes, I think that's a great question. I don't know that I have a magic answer, but I do think that the best way to influence other people is to start with yourself. So the more often you demonstrate the qualities that you want to see in other executives, I think the more people look at you and they're like, oh, she's doing well. So much of it is driven by profit. If you have a place in the sort of capitalistic society that we're in, and you're doing well and you're thriving and you're making money, people pay attention to that. And so I think having a place, having stature, that gives you influence and allows you to it lends credibility to the things that you're saying. And I mean, two of the things that I'm really trying to focus on in my businesses are one, wealth building in African American and Latino communities, and then the other thing is wellness, because it's something that we neglect. The more money I make, the more people I employ, the more people I bring into our ecosystem of success, especially that are minorities and people of color, the greater standing I have. And other people take notice of that. Small business owners, large business owners. I had just recently somebody say, hey, Christina, we want you to join YPO, Young President's Organization. And I'm like, what? I just got this company. Great, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I have a responsibility to join groups like that, because if other people see me and they're like, she's doing right, maybe I can do that too and I can make money. It's infectious, our work and the ways that we serve our communities, it's absolutely infectious. And so I think that's how you do it. I think that you start with yourself and then everybody follows suit. Hopefully my kid, who's probably not paying attention to what I'm saying right now,
she waves.
She's taking notes. She's going to have an overview. Here are my thoughts on the remarks.
Hopefully she's learning, hopefully this kid is learning from us. And they're going to go on to perpetuate the same values that we're instilling in them and that we're demonstrating now. But this really is a function of leading by example. I think that's how you do it.
You got to tell us too how your kid got you into cannabis.
Yeah, so I'll maybe just one like this in the back. She's smoking. That's crazy. I'm such a bad mom. So that's not how she did it. Yeah. So I'll tell you what happened. So my ex and I got into this situation. We were working together in real estate development. And he said, I got this Nigerian and this Jewish person, go ahead and talk to them. I think he was trying to kick me out of the business. That was his nice way of saying, go in here and do something else. And I was like, okay, I'll try something else. And this was a year or two after I had a terminal brain disease. And I had to, yeah, well, it wasn't because I'm not dead, but it was lifeless. Sorry. Yeah, thanks, Mom, for the correction. Always been the other line. You may mess up, but she corrected me. So, thank you, Mom, I skirted death. That's the bottom line. And so I shifted and started exploring cannabis. He's looking at this little business and happened to be cannabis. And I'm going along the motions. I'm looking at these financial forecasts and the modeling in the sector. And I'm like, this is really interesting. My dad, actually, when I was a kid, defended drug dealers. I mean, he was a criminal defense attorney in the 80s. And my exposure, I think, having lived in the city and Southeast and Northeast, I was around drug dealers, but they were human beings to me. They were the people that were giving away turkeys at Thanksgiving. They were the ones doing toy drives, and it humanized them in a way that a lot of other people don't look at them. And so, anyway, I'm looking at cannabis. I'm like, there's some really neat equity programs around the country. This is really interesting. This is neat. I think I can do this. And at one point, my business was threatened. My partner had said at the time, that basically he was going to take my business when he saw it taking off. And I was like, that's not really what I had in mind. And it was devastating for me. And I thought that day, within the next 24 hours, my kid, Vivian was about 7 or 8 years old. She's 13 now. And I thought, never again in life will I be in a position where I have to depend on a man for financial stability. Never again will my daughter be in a situation where she does not have the financial freedom to make decisions the way that she wants to make them. She's going to have more money and opportunity than she could ever imagine. And I'm going to build that runway for her. I'm going to build a runway for other little girls and boys who look like her. And they're going to see my success and they're going to be like, if she can do it, then I can do it. And that's really, yeah, you're welcome. This is a terrifying situation just starting to live again and get my health, and I'm like, oh shit, this man's about to screw me. And not literally, but like financially. And so I erase that from the recording. But I was like, you know, I'm gonna make sure that she has a pathway, and I'm gonna build this not just for her, but her friends and any other little kid that I can touch, so that they can see that this is totally possible. And so that was the inspiration behind the business.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Stacey, you're in like the front lines of these small makers, these tiny companies who are just getting their first shelf space. What are some of the things that you're seeing every day of how justice in business is working and changing people's trajectory?
I mean, I would like to say that the entrepreneurs that I work with all are very like justice centric in the way that they hire, in the way that they choose to. I mean, they have no money, though we do write a lot of makers very nice paychecks. But they're small, right? But they do choose to, like, they donate money to their community, they hire from their community, they, like, you know, I met with a group of individuals a couple of weeks ago to talk about a workforce development training program that's with the city. And so we do have this amazing group of humans that happen to be the creative part of our city, that can make a real difference. And so I like people to know that when they, you know, like, not obviously, but to me, like, when you shop in our stores, you are choosing justice, right? You're choosing your community. You are literally investing in someone's dream that has chosen to go down a path that not everybody goes down, right? And it's not an easy path. It is not easy. Like, there may be great days, but it is not easy. So these people are choosing to go down a hard path, and even in that hard path, they're choosing to take care of the community around them. And by making your purchase, you're going to spend dollars anyway, and giving your money to those people makes a huge difference. They turn around and they put it back in to the community in which they live in. And they also make it like a better place to live, right? Those are the people you want as your neighbors, right? The people that take care of people, the people that have like nice looking houses. Maybe they'll make you a little something. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? Those are the people, if somebody creates a business somewhere, then they are making an investment and they're not going to leave it, right? And so they actually start to change the framework of a community that, like, when I moved here in 2009, everybody said, like, oh, DC, it's so transparent. And so I started, I know, it drives me crazy too. Yeah. And so there for a while, I would say that. I mean, I wouldn't like use it, I wouldn't like say it on stage, but I'd say it to other people like, oh yeah, DC is kind of transient, but let me tell you about this person I met today. And like, I was entrenched in the business community here, and I realized very quickly that it's not transient. There are all these people that have invested their time and money and energy into the city, and there's all these people that I'm working with, that the group gets larger and larger and larger and larger, that are doing nothing but thinking about the people that live on their street and the people that live in the ward that's adjacent to them, and how do we make better schools, and how do we put these people to work, and how do we do these things. And very quickly you realize this is not a transient city. People only leave because they have to, because they can't buy a house, or right. And so if we take those people who want to do this thing, they want to have a business of their own, they want to be able to afford it, and you link them up with people like Lisa, who's going to help them buy a house, and you guys are buying products for them so that I can give them a paycheck, then suddenly these people stay here. And this becomes a much better, more interesting, colorful, dynamic city. I don't think you asked me to talk.
Yeah. Who do you think on like the big, massive company world is doing just as well? Is there anybody doing just as well? Like beyond I put the Instagram post up, so I'm cool, right? who is doing it well in the big company world?
I mean, I will say, just
and no one is a fair answer.
because I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I think the majority of people out there want to do well. So that is me, my Susie Sunshine, rose-colored glasses. We have a big corporate program, so we work with like large companies who want to invest their dollars a little differently. They just don't always know how to. Or people come to me all the time and they're like, "Oh, we're so-and-so company, and we're gonna give a grant to 150 Black businesses, and we want you to help us get the word out. It's due tomorrow." And you're like, but they mean well. They really do. They've like created this program. It's not out of fluff. They're not even doing it. They're not even really doing it to get publicity, because they would have like gotten more publicity about this thing that they're doing. But it's like they're too disconnected from what it is that they're doing. So that's my, and I think that there are large corporations that do a decent job, but I think in general people want to do well. They have money, they want to do it, they just don't know how to get to the right people.
Lisa, you got a mic, but Christina, what do you think? You're like nodding, and you got thoughts.
Man, because I led conscious capitalism, like I'm full of good companies that do this work. We're one, Standard Wellness. But there are B Corps that you can look at that do amazing work and do right by people and their environment. You can go online and find a list of them. But companies like you all have probably flown them, Southwest Airlines. You guys go onto the airplane, they're joking, the crew's funny, the pilot's talking about crashing, it's like, what? But it's funny people, like the snacks are better, they're like united, they got bag space, it's kind of a cattle call in the beginning, but it's like, you get on the plane safely, and it's okay. And the reason why you like the feel of it is because they've got a conscious culture, they put their people first. They invest in the people the workforce development. They give back to their community, they've got their own foundation, and I think that there's a whole ecosystem in some larger companies. Capital One does it, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they're kind of quasi-organized, but they did a good job. There are a number of big organizations, the Motley Fool, they do a good job, they only invest in good companies. So they put their money, they put other people's money, they direct those folks to invest in other companies that only are doing good and doing well. They're not exclusively doing well. So I think there are hundreds of companies out there that could sort of get a blue ribbon for their efforts. But Southwest is one of my favorites just because I love the feel of that company. And I think the folks that are doing the best job, without even naming them, we are encountering them. We've got some local grocery stores, Busboys and Poets does well, Founding Farmers, that's where my favorite friends, he's doing amazing work, and we've got folks in this community that they are like kick-ass when it comes to corporate social responsibility, contributing to the community, or ESG. We're chock full of here in DC. Michael Aiken, who works with a ton of them. He's one of them. There's no shortage of them in this area.
Do you think any of you think DC has the market on that? Like, are we more special and more conscious here than like in New York or Chicago or other big cities? Or is this happening everywhere and it's not getting enough love nationally?
I think there are just companies all around, right? And I think every community is good at hosting their own brand of what justice is. Mm-hmm. And so it can look different for everyone. Justice for a company could be doing a trash walk and the owner shows up and picks the trash up too. It can show up in just making sure that your staff has enough time to care for an aging parent. It can be time off for family and children. It can be making sure that you're offering wraparound healthcare for people that work with their hands and their bodies. It's about saying, we're going to give to Birdseed because that's an investment in our city and our community. It's saying we want our staff to spend some time on the clock volunteering because that matters to us, because we're part of the community that we're serving and we want the community to support us serving them. Exactly, or voting. We did and have done early and often, phone banking from the office and setting aside time for people to call elected officials and call people and ask them to just get out that vote, and making room for our team members to be whole human people, not just employees and workers. And that's important for me. When I was a kid, one of my big corporate crushes without even knowing it was Patagonia, because I lived in Idaho and it was really cold. And I was super poor, and Sun Valley, Idaho, where I lived for quite a bit of time, did a really nice job of taking care of the poor kids. And they made sure all the kids could ski. And if you're gonna ski, they're not gonna have you go out in like sweatpants and a shirt, right? So they make sure you have the ski gear. And so I had a really great chance to like learn to ski as a kid that like sometimes we weren't sure if there was gonna be enough food, but every Friday I went skiing, which was weird and amazing. And I'm a pretty good skier. A big deal. It was a big deal. And I remember I got a Patagonia fleece blue pullover. And it was like I had arrived. I mean, there was no possession that was more important to me. And it was just like a practical thing. But like that was when, in the early 80s, when brand was sort of really emerging, like where you started to add ID to your clothing. And it wasn't your ID, it was someone else's, which is also weirder. But Patagonia had a lot of staying power, right? And they gave $140 million through their 1% for the Planet campaign. And Yvonne's, the owner and founder of Patagonia, said, that's just paying rent for our use of the planet. And that's a really simple concept. It's truly simple. And we thought he gave big. And then in July, he went all in and gave it all away for climate. And if there's one dream I have in life, it's just get rich and give it away. Because that is something I want to do in life that can make a difference. I want to be Yvonne.
Do you realize that's one of the first things you told me?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I met you, and Lisa was like, hi, Lisa. I want to get rich and give it all away.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
It didn't really go like that. But I just
something
thought,
like that.
Yeah, it went something like that. And then I remember watching, somebody had done a video of you. Do you remember this video? And you posted it on your Facebook. And I sent it to so many people because at that time, I was like running a nonprofit and I had staff, but not like I do now. I wasn't running a company, but you were talking so much about how like you helped, I think in the video you were talking about how you helped somebody in your company get a house.
That's never happened.
Is that a story?
How many people in this room have I helped get a house? Raise your hand if I've helped you get a house.
I like sent that video to so many people because I was like, her. I want to be like her. Like that's it's one thing to be a business and to donate your money and do things differently, but to literally show up for your people, as simple as you think that is, it just like in the like the hamster wheel of doing the work, sometimes you forget that like you can also take care of the people on your team in that way. So that's something that's always stuck with me.
Thank you. She wanted to be me. I want to be her. It's true. Yeah.
Well, let's pass that mic around for questions in the audience. We'll slide this over. Got one in the back already. Just throw your hand down and we'll take your question, and we'll just be like backup singers over here. Well, I'll share this one.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna project.
Sounds great. What's your name?
Name's Foster. Thank you all so much. It's inspiring and also resonating with my philosophy, so thank you. I wanted to ask, while you're also managing scaling, which is a natural part of business, how do you balance that with also wanting to remain good to your employees and ethical and transparent with salaries and all that? Any best practices that you would suggest as you balance scaling with wanting to remain consciously capitalist?
Everybody's like,
I don't know what comes to your mind, but I just think like it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard, especially when I'm like, that's all I can say is it's hard. When like money is tight and you know that you're watching like every cent when you are not profitable yet, but you're like running amazing things, and your team who you love continues to come to you and ask for more and more and more, and you think so highly of them, but you also know that you have other people to take care of. It is hard to make that decision. And I would like to say that we're all great at making those decisions, but I don't know. I mean, I think like there's some, like, I hate to use the word failing, but like something has to give. So you can be generous, but you have to be smart. And I think those are really hard choices to make. And that's just me speaking very candidly.
So I probably have the smallest enterprise on the stage in terms of people, head count. And my mom and my daughter are victims of my growth. And so, I say it's kind of funny, but the reality is, Michael's shaking his head, he knows his kid, his son, and his wife are too. He does an amazing job with them and making sure he invests time with them. But, so I had to start this business like 3 years ago or so, 5 years ago kind of, but like 3 years ago officially. I had to raise $330,000 to just go after a license. I had to raise another $15.5 million in 6 months to basically put it on paper to demonstrate capitalization. None of that money, after the license process was over, was in my pocket, and there was nothing left. And then I had to keep going. And so there's just me, so I've got a little bit of savings, not much money, because I worked in the nonprofit sector and I was broke like everybody else. And I mean, we split rent, thank God my mom lives with me, but if I didn't, I'd be like living below the poverty line. Like, we wouldn't be in a good community. And my mom sometimes has to eat dust because I'm like, I'm sorry, I gotta work from like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sorry, Viv, I can't make your volleyball stuff. And I think it is a conversation. My mom literally said the other day, one more state, I'm gonna kill you. I mean, that's what came through. But I'm supposed to serve. So I think there's a balance you have to strike between understanding what your end goal is, what's your call to duty, what is your responsibility to the people around you and your community. And you have to keep that at the forefront, and then you have to be honest with the people around you. Like, you can't make paycheck, I can't make paycheck, I mean, I've got a young guy here, Ryan, he's a GW intern. I met him not too long ago. I'm so great that he's on board. But I was like, I can pay minimum wage, I can do that, but like that's coming out of my pocket, until I get capitalized. I can't afford anything else. Like there's, you're gonna have to work part-time, you'll have to be a 1099. I think transparency is so much a part of being excellent. Just being honest, because we're all human beings. Like businesses are comprised of human beings. So I think that's a big part of how you remain successful, is just being honest about where you are.
I try to do lessons in P&L. Everybody loves that.
Yeah, people love that.
You lost
It's just so that they understand. And then I still say, yes, you can have that raise.
Yeah.
But I want them to understand also where we are. Like, we're very transparent in everything that we do.
There is this simple transactional reality of you want to give as much as you can and you have a limited number of resources. And that's just a fixed state of being, right? At any given point in time. One of the things that we've done across now all the different birds that I've released is not just make justice and taking great care of the team and thinking about the stakeholder versus the shareholder, is not just asking myself to be responsible for that, or my leadership team, or the investors, but to ask the client and the community, how invested are you in this model of business? Do you want to do business with me because my neighbor over here isn't doing business that way? Do you want to contribute to the Birdseed Foundation? Do you want to spend your money where you know your money goes farther because your money is being invested not only in your need, but in the community that you're part of? And I find that holistic, almost three-dimensional approach to thinking about justice as part of your brand, not just your business model, attracts people. And bringing people into the fold of what you're trying to achieve brings more brand loyalty, and it brings more team loyalty, because there will be times that are lean and hard when you're trying to do business this way. When you're trying to do business anyway, there are times that are lean and hard because we have pandemics and great resignations, and we have existential crisis that goes after the pandemic and the great resignation. And you want people to still be seated saying, we can weather the storm because we've done it before, and because we know you're committed to us and the community and our lives and our families and who we want to be in the world. And so we're going to do the same for you and this company. And when you bring people together that way, there's a whole different kind of mission involved. And then it does become a community event and not just your profit, which is why in my book, I should talk about that, right? In the book, I do say that if you do put justice over profit, you can soar in business and you can still be profitable. And there are different ways of measuring profit, and it can still be cash profits, but there's creating those jobs in the first place. And then saying, okay, we have 10 entry-level jobs and we're paying minimum wage, it's out of my pocket. Okay, what's next? It's increasing that wage. It's creating a benefit. Okay, if I go on the exchange, can I add things? Okay, what if I'm going to give a bonus at the holidays? Okay, all right, so now I'm going to have this, then I can do that. I can get a gas card. I can buy them gas. I can tell them that there's a house that I know of that's available for sale that they'll never find on the open market. I can do that. I can make sure that they get enough time off for their families. I can say, go home to your relatives for 2 weeks. Don't worry about work. I've got you covered. There are a million ways of saying, I care about you caring about this company and what we're doing that isn't just the check. And we hope that the check is always there, because money matters, it really does. And wealth matters, it really does. But sometimes you can't start there. But if everybody knows I want them to end there, then I hope they'll stay on that journey with me.
All right, any other hands? All right.
Hi there, good evening everybody, I'm Brianna. I had 2 questions. The first question, in transition from nonprofitship to organization business, how did you go about changing your mission, your vision? Like, how did those kind of structural components of what you're founding, like whatever your business is, whatever your founding is, whatever your principles, your models, how did that shift along the way, and like what guidance did you have in making that shift, whether it's business to business or just in general from a nonprofit to LLC, whatever the organization is?
Okay. So I'll start, I guess. I think so. I worked for the DC Marketing Center. It was a nonprofit at one point. It's now the DC Economic Partnership. And similarly, we actually helped startups get started, and we supported them. The DC Chamber was co-housed in our space at the time. And then just worked for a number of different nonprofits. You know, I think at the end of the day, most nonprofits, even if they're not delivering direct services to people, they put people at the forefront of their mission. And so it translates easily into business. And if you're doing business well, you're putting people at the forefront of your mission. Those are the folks that are delivering your services, or they're working for you, or they're serving the community, they're building whatever you've got. For me, it wasn't like a hard shift. In fact, there was no shift. It was seamless. It was just like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and it's serving people. In terms of the guidance, I don't know about you guys, but I had some pretty amazing mentors along the way, incredible people, and they weren't all executives. I mean, I've got that too, a bevy of them. But my mom was one of my mentors. You know, my dad was one of my mentors. Like, everybody that I think touched me was a part of my growth experience. Talking to somebody in the restaurant, my daughter is in the back like me. No, she wasn't one of my mentors. Like, okay, be on stage. But like, she definitely kept me grounded. But I think there's an ecosystem in this world that goes beyond direct education. And I think you have to be open at all times, your mind and your spirit, to learning from people. And I think that's how you evolve. It doesn't, Lisa talked about her uncle being her cousin being a critical force in her life. I don't know that was going to be her mentor, but that's literally driven where her son lays in bed. It's driven the business model that she has. I think you have to remain open to receiving knowledge and education and wisdom from all walks of life, and that is how you continuously evolve, and you do it fast because you're learning all the time because you're open to it. So I don't know. Again, seamless transition from the nonprofit sector. Everybody basically poured into me.
I still think I'm running a project. I really don't know if I could tell you that it's much different. Honestly, no transition, but I will back her up or echo her to say that like it's not necessarily the education or the classes that you take, but it's the people that are beside you, or that somebody says, oh, you should talk to this person, or somebody that you meet on a panel at an event. That's where a lot of your education comes from. When in regards to entrepreneurship and running business or running nonprofits or creating programs that never ever end.
So when you have the grant report is due, let me know and I can edit it for you for your project. And as someone, I spent 15 years in the nonprofit world. I swear I'd never go back, so I just started another one. Yeah. Just like any good entrepreneur. No, it's very different. It's real different. No, it's very different. It's totally different.
But it's similar, right?
Let me tell you this. I spent all of those years in the nonprofit world, and with few exceptions, I wasn't quite sure what I was doing for the world. And then I started a business, and then it was real clear what I could do for the world, and it was way more impactful. And this is not to say that there isn't a really strong, important, and like powerful place for nonprofits to play a role, but I also knew that it was my unique opportunity to say, business too can play a really important part in this world, and in fact, we have to. Because the world, in order for the world to be a better place, a more democratic and just place, business has to play a role, full stop. Because government's 2 generations behind, the nonprofit world is busy, and 2 nickels behind, and business has a unique moment and window of opportunity and a voice and agency to actually move the needle. And so in business, I have a totally different opportunity to make a difference. And I've done just that because my business gets to do birdseed. And my business gets to say, I'm gonna put my people before I put profit. My business is we put place over profit. Like, that's all my choice. I don't have to talk to a board of directors or even my own shareholders. That's what we get to do because we know it's the right way to be, and it differentiates my business. I believe truly to the toes we're more successful because of that business model, and that's exactly what the book is all about.
Thank you. I'm kind of in a space. I'm in a space where my company is listed as like an LLC, and like when I tell people the work that I do, they're like, "Oh, that sounds like a nonprofit." So I'm like, "Am I in the wrong space?" And I always imagined myself being a business owner, being in that space in my community. Well, coming here is me trying to get in community with people who believe that the work that I do is still a business. So thank you for that. So I guess my second question would be...
what do you do? Tell everyone what you do, too.
Okay, so I do a lot. I'm a former educator and teaching in Baltimore and DC public schools.
Thank you.
Last year, I actually decided to not do that and to pursue my business on time. No money, no nothing. I just up and quit and said, I'm going to teach my kids. So in homes, I'm tutoring. I have like school programs where kids come in Baltimore or White Marsh and do dance and art classes. And now I just started a preschool program with 1 kid, and I teach her all day. So I'm in this academic field of teaching and learning because I'm in the process of disrupting American education system and how I believe children from marginalized backgrounds deserve to be taught. So I'm in a space now where I'm like, telling my dance instructors, hey, I can pay you next month. I'm in that space right now where I'm funding my business. And people are like, if you need to be a nonprofit, like there are people who will give you grants for this. There's this, there's that. So I'm just like, I know nothing about the business world. I'm like essentially teaching myself. So my next question essentially was, when is the time, or when there ever was a time where, one, I quit my job. So this is literally me tutoring, hustling, trying to pay my employees. Well, when does it get to a chance? Like, I have you said you want to get up, you want to keep going. I'm just like, I'm just waiting to figure out more. Like, I'm literally just in a moment of like trusting God and trusting this path and just knowing that wherever I'm supposed to be, I'm going to wind up. And I keep putting myself in spaces. I found this event with Ruby, and I was like, I'm going out, know anybody, I'm just driving, I'm gonna figure it out. But I'm also still in a space where like money is a real thing. We live in this society. People want to get paid. I don't want to lose my team. I have 8 Black women who attend Morgan State, and they want to help me. They've been working with me since August, and they have not gotten paid. And I'm like, I want to pay y'all. I don't know what I'm paying y'all, but I'm going to do it. So I'm like, when do I need to scale back? Should I scale back? And I'm hearing like, just be transparent. And all I'm saying is like, it's coming. this conference. So that's how let's take that.
I appreciate you sharing your story. I think so many of us have had moments where we have walked by faith and not necessarily by sight, and so that's very relatable. Yeah, you need to get a business model together, and you need to get it on paper, and it needs to be a business plan, and then you need to work towards that. Because, so we've got one project that was started, and 2 businesses, but I knew out of the gate, and this isn't always the case, I'm trying to get this money. Like, I was like, once we're operational, this is a $30 to $70 million enterprise. And that's one of the companies that I have. And so you definitely need to have the vision, but you also need to have numeric justification behind it in the form of a business plan. There are a number of small business incubator support organizations and nonprofits, we can talk to you offline about that afterwards, that can help you formulate a business plan. There are groups like SCORE that offer mentors to individuals who are getting started. You know, there are classes that are for free. edX, which is a huge online resource right now. You can take classes from Harvard, all of the leading universities, 230 participants, to learn about business, and they're all free, and they're all accessible and online. So we can give you more resources, but you absolutely have to get it together, because to your point, if you don't have that business plan together, you're not delivering on your promise, not only to yourself, but the folks that are supporting you. And we all put those people at the forefront. There will be times where you waver, but you absolutely have that vision and that plan behind you so that you can sort of course correct if you're off a little bit. But if you have no plan, it's like you constantly be off, you know. So we're here to encourage you and support you.
I agree with everything she said. I also would say to you that you can have a nonprofit mindset and seek money without being a nonprofit. So like as you explore what you're doing and you work on your business plan, etc., there are, I mean, you can refer to yourself as a social enterprise, and there is money. You are being of service to people, just like a nonprofit. That's why people say, you sound like a nonprofit. There is money out there for people like you.
Yeah, and I would much rather make than ask.
Yeah.
That was always my play.
Too.
And there are programs that are designed, in fact, you know, and maybe this is a good way to sort of wrap the Birdseed conversation, but Birdseed started in its early iteration was a conversation that Lydia, who's in the room with me right now on our team, we sat down to talk about how do we create an identity for our giving and our community work and our philanthropy and our trash walks. And I love a good trash walk, by the way. It's really satisfying. There's so much garbage and it really bothers me, and it's really just, it's good. And there's so many memories it'll create too, because there are a lot of weird things that'll come around or across on the street. Anyway, but when we first started the Birdseed work, it wasn't a foundation. It was all about giving doers, makers, and disruptors in this city some cash to make a difference. And just like Stacey said, we've decided, listen, let's find some folks who aren't a 501c3, who aren't an LLC, who didn't do any of that. Because you know what, all that stuff is a barrier to doing things, right? Some people just have great ideas and they need a little cash and they'll get it done. And so we said, let's go ahead and give a doer, a maker, a disruptor $2,500 to work on a project that can unfold over 3 months. And we got the coolest applications, but the only simple caveat was it could only be 1 page, the whole application, because honestly, I did not have time to read more than a page, and that kept it simple, right? It kept it simple for the applicant, it kept it simple for the giver, and it kept it simple in terms of implementation. And so we funded things as cool as bicycle repair stations in Southeast and neighborhoods that didn't have them. We funded, we have a veteran farmer who needed a tractor we helped with, from murals to an organization where they help the black girls who code. We not only gave them some money, but we gave them our offices. And one of the pre-pandemic, the last Birdseed grant that we gave, when it was just the micro grant program, was a woman who hosts birthday parties for homeless kids.
Oh my God. Oh. I love that. That's amazing. I want to go.
And you think, oh wow, that $2,500 sponsored 25 birthday parties for kids that don't have a home. And so somebody else was going to wonder if she had 501c3 paperwork. I don't think so. And listen, why don't we just buy her the balloons so she doesn't have to pay taxes on that either? And business can be really, really innovative in terms of how we support and help community members. That's our prerogative, and it's our opportunity as business owners in a way that nonprofits box us in. And you can always have the best of all the worlds. And that's what I believe it means to run a just company, is to be creative and say, oh, we can give $2,500 around. And for the record, and it wasn't done for this reason, I got way more than $2,500 worth of marketing spend on those grants. And somebody else got to throw 25 birthday parties. So think of business as an opportunity to make a difference, and it'll always pencil out for you. And you can do good, and you can make money at the same time. And that is the social enterprise we're talking about. And I posit and I argue and I fundamentally believe we have to have that be the way business operates, because we do need to lean on business to make a difference in the world.
Lisa Wise, Stacey Price, Christina Betancourt Johnson, for hosting us today. Thank you for making it out here.
Thank you.
You're welcome for hosting.